How's it going, everybody? It is my favorite time of the week where we answer y'all's questions. It's Q&A Sunday time. If you guys have questions in the chat, make sure you guys hit me up with some of them and we will alternate. If you guys have never been to one of these before, we answer questions from the previous week's YouTube video, some of the most upvoted all the way down, and try to answer more that we can. Try to give you guys answers, well thought out stuff, and some stuff just off the cuff, which I think is a very good way to get a real answer. We're going to alternate between, hopefully, both the YouTube comments as well as people in chat. Try to balance these back and forth. So, first and foremost, let's start up at the top. And it says, do you think Rocket League should implement cross-platform trading? It's really annoying when I try to give stuff to my friends and I have to log in with a different device if you give them. And I feel like cross-platform trading is a no-brainer. So, the difficulty of cross-platform is each platform has its own, like, community. It has its own, like, ecosystem, and they don't want to have an influx of certain items that get into the other ecosystems and ruin the value and the pricing. And talking about like oversaturation and supply and demand, if there's a massive influx of a bunch of items from one community into the next, it can cause inflation, and then and vice versa. It can completely kill the value of an item. So that's part of the reason they don't do it. But now I'm pretty sure that because all the accounts are linked to your Epic Games account, they're all the same. I'm pretty sure. Davey in the chat says, just give us cross-platform text chat. I think if you're in a party, you can. Because if I play in a tournament that's cross-platform enabled, they put us in a party and then I can talk in chat to that person. So I do think some of that stuff has been implemented, if I remember correctly. But overall, I think trading cross-platform might be a thing. I think once you link your account to others, they all get like shoved somewhere. But yeah, cross platform chat is party only, which I also don't want little console kids chirping me when I mess up a shot or something anyway. So you don't need to trade connect. You don't need to trade connect your... Wait, what? I'm not familiar enough. I can't say it is like that or not, but I do know the reason that they don't do it in other games is because of the markets and the ecosystems that have been created by the community. So that stuff's probably gonna stay the same. Which rumored roster, if true, would you like to see the most? Ooh, that's a good question. Let me pull up my roster doc. I want to see a new rebuilding of Vitality, and if that ends up happening, there's conversations of Astral having his priority set with Vitality. I would like to see Astral, Alpha, and Radosin. Astral, Alpha, and Radosin as a trio. I would really like to see that. Just the thought of Astral and Alpha together intrigues me. I don't know if it would be successful or not. I don't know what those interactions would look like and how they would get along, but I would be very interested to see on what that looks like. That's a lot of mechanics. That's a lot of talent coming together. And maybe it's too much of the same thing, but I would be very curious to see on how successful that could be. Outside of that, there is conversation of Shazette and Fairy Peak playing together. And I think that's a little bit of the same of current play style. And I don't know what it would develop into, or if one of them takes a more like forward approach and a more direct approach of like being aggressive. Also, CRR over to Complexity is pretty cool if that ends up happening. If Mist goes to FaZe, that's an assumption that that team's going to be pretty good. And the latest rumor is Vatira joining Itachi and Exotic on K-Corp. We'll be talking about more of that in a video in the future. So yeah, there's some pretty spicy ones out there that we'll be talking about in future videos. But I think like just initial reaction, if Astral goes to Vitality, he joins a trio of himself, Alpha, and someone else. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm curious. Like the curiosity, like similar play styles, ton of mechanics. What does that look like? How does that formulate? I'm interested to see what it would be. So that kind of stuff intrigues me. Also, if Vatira is truly off of Moist, who are Joyo and Rise playing with? No idea. So that'll be interesting as well. A lot of interesting things. And as I've stated a billion times, it's not even like Vatira leaving Moist is not even the craziest roster change that's happening this offseason. So more to come. It's gonna be spicy. Good question though. Good question though. Why do you think there isn't a larger amount of players who are older that stick around? It seems that quite a large portion of pros are quite young And there seems to be some sort of cutoff for when you've been in the scene for a long time and retire or become washed. I thought it was an interesting topic to talk about, since in some other esports, there's players that have stuck around for decades on a game and are still top contenders. Mango from Smash Melee, who's been in the scene since the mid-2000s on a single game. I mean, there's also been many different iterations of Smash that have come out to new iterations. Do you think there's something to do with lack of transferable skill in a lot of games because skill ceiling is moving so fast? It's hard to stay on top. Is it a honing or innovating thing? So the way that I approach it, and the way I take it, is you are going to see some of these new pros, like your young 15, the Moist team, any of the like all of Liquid, any of the young up and coming, the beast modes and stuff that are super mechanically cracked. Rocket League as a game, the level of play increased at such a rapid rate, because you guys got to understand, like, Rocket League doesn't translate from anything. Even the predecessor in Start PC, while the concept of the game is there, it's an entirely different physics engine that you have to learn. It is unique to itself. And because of that, the skill level increased at such a rapid rate as more and more became accessible to it and started grinding and getting through. And from season 1 to probably about season like 7, maybe 8, there was this very rapid ascension, very rapid ascension in like skill level and the mechanics playing such a factor and all the different nuances that went into it. And over the last couple seasons, you've seen it plateau a little bit harder. It's still increasing. You're still seeing, you know, fakes getting more involved and people having the confidence to challenge things when they shouldn't, even though there's a massive risk involved. They still take that risk because they know that they're that good and they have the mechanics to recover and get back and whatever. But you're not really seeing like the big gaps in play from season 1 to 2, going from like being able to use the backboard to infield passes to like the flip resets and ceiling shots, and like that stuff just doesn't happen like it used to. Like, yeah, it's a flip reset. Maybe he can go for 2 now, but I know if I challenge that early, I should be able to shut it down, or at least just force his hand to my player on the backboard who can then clear it. Like, that stuff isn't as glaring as it once was. So I think that's part of it. That a lot of the old guard, there is still a couple that are around. Metzenaris, Torment, Garrett. There's a couple, K-Dop. Like, there's a few that are still in the space that are competing at like a top 16 team in their region. But those are like the very special few. And the old guard has fallen off, not because of age, but just because either A, they didn't see like Remco was one of those players that could have probably stuck with it, but just didn't feel like there was any money in the game. So he decided to leave. Certain players that have just felt like this wasn't an option, like a career path that they could take. They didn't think there was enough money to stick with it. So there is that kind of conversation. But now that there's a ton of money, there's a lot more reason to continue to grind. It's like nobody else gets into the venue to practice like Torment. Like Torment gets in there at 7:30 a.m. before LAN starts and practices in the practice room just to make sure that he's on. So I think there is definitely an enticement from some of these players and a lot of opportunity. But I think the biggest thing with like your Mango explanation is think about how many players are playing melee versus ultimate versus otherwise. Like there is differences in that regard too. So I think it is very tough to stay at the top, and that's why I give as much credit to players like Metza, Torment, Garrett, etc., for who have been able to stick around for as long as they have. But I do think that you are going to start to see the longevity of careers increase, because I do think these young players who are super mechanical, their mechanics aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. The stuff that they're doing now should be fine, and they should be able to innovate for reaction time and all that kind of stuff as time progresses. So I expect them to have pretty long careers and the average age to increase. You're still going to see these young bucks come in, the Zens, the Drawleys, the Evos and stuff. There's going to be some that like kind of pop in, but I think some of this old guard are going to be pretty tough to replace. And I talk about old guard, but like Joyo, you know, like there's a picture of him getting his controller signed by Classics, Corrupted G, and Chrome when he was like young, like 5th grade or something like that, or whatever it's been. And now he's 15 and he's, you know, he's like a top 4 team in the world, you know? So seeing that kind of change is pretty crazy over the last 7 years. But I think Joyo as a player now, when he becomes a veteran, you know, 6-7 years from now, is still going to be like that guy. So it'll be interesting to see on where that goes. Apart from growing pro and being casting talent, how difficult is it to build a career in Rocket League Esports? I mean, anytime, like esports as a whole, like if we make this more broad, Spooky, getting involved in esports in general is just like any other job. It's just you're talking about when you apply for a position locally, you're competing with the people who are living locally, or maybe, you know, if it's a bigger corporation or something like that, some outside hiring. With esports, all these positions are pretty sought after, and you have to be the best of the best to get the opportunity. And sometimes there's some people that get in based on who they know and all that kind of stuff. But overall, like, to be a caster in Rocket League Esports, you not only have to compete against all the people in Rocket League, all the community figures, you also have to be so good at your craft that they're, you know, Psyonix is willing to give you a shot. You're also competing against other broadcast talent and other esports, and you still have to be the 0.001% at what you do. And you're doing that against people internationally on a global scale for an entertainment. Like, you're talking like as a pro being the 0.001% at your craft, and you're competing against literally everybody else in the world. Like, there's like Rocket League has what, a player base of 90 million. Arguably a majority of that isn't going to be able to ever make it as a pro. But again, to be the best of the best, to stay in your position, like it's again, imagine if the NFL, you know, was international. Like, yeah, it provides a lot more like availability, but we're talking about rosters of 3, not rosters of 53, you know? So getting into esports in particular, man, is it's a lot of hard work. If you guys don't know Hector or Hex from Optic, let me play a clip for you that will, I think, showcase kind of how it goes. If you guys haven't seen this.
It was tough, man, because there's no sick days. There's no I don't want to get up, or I don't want to stay up, or I don't want to do the extra work. Yep. You know what I'm saying? There's no hours in esports and gaming if you want to make it. It is a 24/7 job that does not sleep. And the only way to succeed and make a living off of this is if you give it your goddamn all. There's no failure. The only failure is if you don't give it your all. Yeah. And when people say, hey man, you know, blah, 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 like, you know, I can't do something Saturday and Sundays, like family time. It's like, all right, cool, that's fine, awesome. Spend it with your family, love your family, you know, family first, all that jazz. But don't expect to be as successful as the guy that says, you know what, I'm gonna do this while I'm spending time with my family. I'm gonna make it work because I know how to balance.
It is cutthroat. It is very difficult. You can ask anybody from this stream how much I work a week. There's literally a channel point redemption command for removing a day that I'm streaming because I work too much. It's a grind, and everybody I talk to in esports talks about like how much of a grind it is and how much goes into it. But you got to start somewhere, and that shouldn't be a deterrent. Like, you need to put yourself in a position where you can be successful in the first place. And a lot of people see the hurdle and go, it's a pretty big hurdle, and then they don't do anything about it. But if you chip away at it and like put effort, like, it's very tough. And to sustain a career, like, I'm very blessed to do what I do, to have a platform that I do, and like the fact that people come and watch me talking about, like, people want to come and ask questions here and then have me talk about it, and they want to listen to that. And it's been going for, I don't know how many Q&As we've done, probably like well over a year, like maybe like 60 weeks worth. That's insane to me. So yeah, I think it is very tough to sustain a career, let alone start a career. But a lot of people believe once you get in, that's when you get to coast, and that's actually when it becomes more difficult. So it's a lot, man. And like, whether you be production, tournament organizer, admin, whatever, like I've said to others, you just got to go out and do it. You got to put in the work, and there's a good chance that it doesn't work out. Things to consider. Do you think esports decals and credits should be tradable? I don't know why you would need to trade an esports decal necessarily. And maybe that's just short-sighted to me, but like, if I'm buying an esports decal, it's to support the team. Why would I give that to somebody else or trade that for somebody else? Like, the value of the decals, I take that back, thinking about it more. In the future, there may be decals that you have that are OG that you can't get anymore. So yes, why not? I think after a certain point and you have some legacy items, yeah. I don't know the credit. I don't think you should need to trade the credits, because you can always buy more esports credits. I don't think the credits need to be tradable, but I think the decals, instead of being locked to your account, I think if they're like a legacy and stuff, there is some cool opportunities for that. I think there's some cool opportunities for the way that works and stuff. Also, to counter you, Fish, no longer support the team since the player you like isn't there. Is that the team's fault, or is that the player's fault? So are you upset at the players who made the decision, or are you upset at the organization that may have not been involved in it? Things to consider. But if you don't want to support them, then just don't wear the decal. And by you trading that, doesn't get rid of the initial purchase. So if people are upset about like trading the decal, yeah, you can maybe get some money back, but that sale has already been If you're just trying to get your money back on it, I can understand that. But I think trading the decal in itself, if you trade the decal, I think then you have to have credits available. So they kind of go hand in hand the more I think about it. But yeah, I think if there's old like legacy decals and stuff and decals that people don't have and would like to get, I think, yeah, I could see that being kind of cool. Some of the replies talk about how the teams wouldn't be able to profit, but it's not the initial sale is where they make their profit, right? I don't know. I don't know what the rev share limitations are or what goes into that stuff. I don't know what the system is required to enable or not. Like, I don't know what Psyonix has done in game to make sure that this stuff is legally okay, and like the branding stuff and like, okay, if I have this decal and all of a sudden I trade it to somebody else, I look at like Counter-Strike and what they do for like signatures and stickers and all that kind of stuff, and those things go up in value as well. So if they can do it, why can't Psyonix? But they're also using the Steam marketplace, which is real money versus like an in-game arbitrary currency that is based upon the economy that would be created. So I don't know. I don't know how it would work, but even with me saying that, even though we have like an arbitrary economy that is made by our community, people still spend real money on items, even though it's against terms of service. So yeah, I'd be curious. I also think, now this is besides the point, I think that, again, there should be a portion of esports decal costs that go to the prize pool like Dota does, and they should tell us exactly how much in game. Like, there should be a total displayed of like, this is how much money's been raised for the RLCS prize pool, and that should be a live updated thing, in my opinion. Dota has a $34 million prize pool. Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. What do you think the 3 big takeaways Psyonix should have from RLCS 21-22 now that the season is over? Oh man, double elimination is poopy. No, I'm just kidding. I think that they realized that the big one is that I think less is more. I think you, by simplifying things, will get better retention rates and more people invested in your space. I think a lot of people are burnt out of watching Rocket League every weekend for like 6 hours a day for 3 days. And if you make the days faster, more people will watch. So like if I'm watching 4 hours of Rocket League versus 8 hours, yeah, I'm gonna watch all 4 hours. I'll watch every single match, even if I'm invested in the team or not. I'll watch it because it's only 4 hours. Like that's an easy broadcast. But if you're telling me there's like 6 or 8, I'm probably gonna dip somewhere because I can't be bothered to watch that much every single weekend. And that applies, I think, in many different aspects. The way that the format is built, the way that regionals are done, how many lives these players get, all that kind of stuff. Like the format can be simplified a little bit. And then you look at like the World Championship. Why did we run 7 best-of-7s on one day when everything else was like 4 matches tops? Like group stages were 4 matches. It was 4 hours. Then they did some show match stuff at the end that were optional, and it was awesome. But then they ran like the freestyle competition in the middle of a series or something like that, and people are like, well, this is kind of weird. Now I've got to wait for my matches to happen. So like kind of the implementation and like making sure that the competitive integrity and like the additional content doesn't take away from why we're there, which is the World Championship. While I think those things are cool and it's awesome to showcase 1v1s and freestyles and stuff, I think we're there to watch the best teams in the world compete, not the sponsorship thing that you have. So finding ways to do that. I think B-roll content, and I've talked about this in another video, I think B-roll content shows how great some of that stuff is. Like building these personalities and really leaning into that stuff is really, really cool. So being able to do that kind of stuff throughout the regular season as well. I talked about this as well in my overall thoughts on the RLCS season video. When we go to LAN, we get the Rizzo retirement videos, the family videos, all that additional content. Having more of that throughout the regular season will make sure that regionals don't feel so templated and regurgitated. They feel very dull after a while. And finding ways to mix it up with cool little content here and there goes a long way. Whether it be interviews or otherwise, that stuff is really, really important. And then I think the biggest thing as well is the amateur scene. I agree with Spooky. They need to find a way, while we had RLRS in the past, they need to find a way to make sure that these teams that are ranked like 17 to 32, 17 to 24, have some way to build and strengthen themselves to get back into the RLCS. Because every other week they play in a tryout, they fall short, and then they just kind of SOL. They need something else too. So I think the top level, the pros, the top 8 are really, really happy with their situation. I think the middle of the pack is, fighting to make top 16 consistently and get some money. But the space below that is in a pretty tough spot. So just a little bit more to support that system, I think would be cool. So here's what they can do. They can do that with team streams. They can do that with community casters, find a way to develop talent in the space. Like There's a lot of good ideas that have been thrown around that I've talked about in the past as well that that can be done. So those are the 3 things. Simplify your broadcast and your format, whether it be with how you approach how many matches are done, sponsorships, all that kind of stuff. If you're going to do an 11-day tournament, might as well make it 12 and make it so people are only watching 4 matches and 3 matches for the grand finals. Help develop the amateur scene a little bit, and then additional content throughout the entire year, whatever that entails. I would say those 3. Oscar says, is it better for a team to bench a player like BDS benchmark or release that player to go look for another org team? So this one is actually not up to Mark. A little bit of insight on how this works. This will be the last question. For those that do not know, when a player gets benched like that, it's because they are still under contract. While Mark probably wants to go and try out for other teams, he is contractually obligated to be on BDS. And the only way BDS is going to let a caliber talent of Mark go is if someone buys out the remainder of his contract. BDS signed on the dotted line just like Mark did. We are going to pay you this amount of money for this many months or years or whatever the agreed terms are. We're going to get our value out of that. Whether you sit on the bench or otherwise, you are our player for this time. That's just the way it is. And if another team is like, man, this Mark guy is really good, we want him, BDS is going to go, yeah, we know he's good, and you're going to pay a bunch of money before we go and make our competition more difficult for us. So it's not that it's better or worse. It's just intelligent to do. We don't want to let go of this really good player for free. We want someone to pay and help us recoup some of that cost so we can put that into the amount of money we paid for Seiko from Endpoint. But then on the other side of it too is like, for Mark, yeah, it kind of sucks. Like, he's got to sit there and wait. But I mean, that's the reality of the contract. Sometimes that stuff happens. It's unfortunate. Like, there's no way really around it. And if a team isn't willing to buy out his contract, maybe BDS is acting too much, it can actually really punish his contract. It can be really detrimental to a player's career. So luckily Mark has found his new team with ARG, which I'm excited about. But yeah, it's there's a lot of factors that go into that stuff. So the restricted free agent, as it's referred to, basically means like, hey, you are LFT, you're looking for a new team, but someone's got to buy out the rest of your contract. Is really good for the org. It protects their investment and everything else. But Mark is still being compensated, right? Mark, even though he's chilling on the bench, is being paid and is just sitting there. And the cool thing too is he's allowed to put out the Mike Wazowski memes and the funnies that happened after the winter and spring major. So it's kind of the way it goes, man. It's kind of the way it goes. So that is going to do it for today's Q&A video. We'll ask, and I'm sure we'll get asked and we'll answer some more questions on the stream here in just a bit. But that is going to do it for today's video. Again, still my favorites every single week. Love being able to sit and chat with you guys from week to week and answer your questions about what you have off the top of your head, as it's greatly appreciated. So if you guys would like to continue to see these every single week, let me know. Comments down below, any questions that you guys have, any things you'd like me to answer, anything I possibly missed. Maybe there's something going on in the space that you're like, ooh, what's Lawler's take on this? Hit me with it, or come over to the stream. Twitch.tv/Lawler. Our streams are basically a Q&A video every single day. So coming out of this, we'd love to have you. But that's going to do it for today's video. As always, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. If you see questions you like down below, make sure you guys like those as well so they go towards the top. And we'll see you next week for more. Peace.